Welcome to the Human Athlete Podcast, empowering your life transition beyond sport, while celebrating the whole person behind the athlete. With your hosts, Kelsi Stockard, Steve Moore, and Jaime Comer, powered by Athlete Career Transition. Thank you for joining us today on the Human Athlete Podcast. I'm Jaime Comer, and I'm joined with my amazing podcast host, Kelsi Stockard. Thanks for joining us, Kelsi.
Thanks for having me, Jaime. I'm so excited to be here today.
Yeah. So for those who have not met us yet or who haven't listened to other episodes, I'm the Chief Transition Guide with Athlete Career Transition. In a nutshell, I support the well-being, so the emotional, physical, spiritual, and all aspects of well-being for the transitioning athlete as they move beyond sport. I'm also a former professional athlete, I'll say, an Olympic medalist with Team USA and water polo. How about you, Kelsi?
Yeah, I am ACT's chief storyteller. So I've made it my new goal, my mission, my passion to really normalize the conversation behind the athlete retiring from sport and what that transition looks like. I want to dive into the conversation behind mental health, behind retirement, and just go to those vulnerable places. I'm also a former professional athlete myself. I used to play with the USA rugby team in both sevens and 15s.
Yeah. Oh, we are going to the vulnerable places today, Kelsi. We're talking about self-worth and identity. If there's something more vulnerable than self-worth, I'm not entirely sure what that is yet, because self-worth is just like at our core gut, that feeling in the center. And we're going to today, and through a few episodes as we're splitting this apart, so you have time to marinate on this for everyone listening. We're going to explore what self-worth is. We're going to explore how it relates to our identity as we're transitioning out of sport, moving from being an athlete to being, well, what, maybe beyond that. And right. And then we're also exploring the journey of self-worth. So what does that journey look like? If our self-worth is in one place, how does it, blossom and bloom into something else, something that feels, say, more nourishing to us, if that's what the journey we're on. And we're also going to explore through these episodes, the continuing of tools to cultivate your self-worth, to nourish your self-worth. And by that, really help define who you are, because they're so intricately related. Yeah. Okay. We're marinating on that. And let's first ground ourselves like we love to do in these episodes. Kelsi, are you ready?
Yes, it's my favorite part. Let's do it.
Okay, assume the position, friends. And remember, if you are using a car, anything where your eyes need to stay open, please, or do keep them open. Otherwise, you can settle in however feels best for you. Okay, go ahead and just find yourself in your body. You can close your eyes or soften your gaze if that feels okay. And just connect to your breath, the simplicity of your inhale and your exhale, knowing that you are exactly where you're meant to be here with us, that there's nowhere else you need to be, and to give yourself a thank you, a nod, a gratitude, a pause, thanking yourself for giving yourself this time and doing what you needed to do to be here. And imagine from whatever is touching towards the ground, maybe the base of your spine, for example, or a seat. Imagine roots reaching down into the earth, stemming from our body, extending outward and downward, below whatever we're sitting on or on, and reaching actually into the soil, into the earth. And these roots run deep, like a tree that runs deep and wide, connecting us to the soil, to the entire earth, grounding us and connecting us, helping us feel really nourished and nurtured during this conversation and during this time. And bring your energy and focus back up to that breath of yours, this fluid and consistent breathing. Noticing the temperature in the nostrils or the mouth as you breathe in and out. Noticing just any thoughts that come in and out and just let them flow by. And if it helps, or if your hands are available to you, maybe place one hand on your upper stomach area and another hand on your heart. We're just bringing our energy inward, our focus inward, and also connecting with that hand on the gut area, the stomach area, connecting to like our second brain, this intuition space, and this space of that holds and houses, this energy around our self-worth. Just feeling that energy there and noticing whatever you notice there, whatever comes up. And I invite you to complete this sentence, with whatever feels right. I am, and we are. And let that settle in for you. And in your own time, just bring some movement to your body. Maybe your fingertips, your toes, your head, or stretch your arms to the sky if that feels yummy for you. Giving yourself another thank you for centering, for grounding, for pausing, and for being you. And welcome back, friends. How was that, Kelsi?
Let me tell you, my baby, I am 8 months pregnant and she loves that. It was so
Yeah.
funny. I swear, right when I started kind of moving myself, she was like, "Oh yeah, I feel energized after that," and started kicking
Yeah.
around. So that was a fun mom moment.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. And what words came up for you, if you mind me asking? The I am and we are.
Yeah, so when I thought of the I am, I felt I am whole, which is really
Mm,
exciting and something I frankly haven't felt in a long time. And it was a very I got a smile on my face when I thought about that. And then we are growing, as you and I with this podcast, what we're the conversations we're bringing to the table,
mm-hmm,
um, with this human athlete collective, this group of athletes who are transitioning and kind of navigating through life and through this
mm-hmm.
transition time. And it's just like, we are always growing. And I'm just grateful to be a part of this community.
Mm, me too, Kelsi. And I resonate with that with so many levels. And yeah, what came up for me was I am worthy. And that's something I was not
Ooh.
always able to say. And that on some days I don't feel, right? Some days it's like, ooh, am I feeling worthy today? And I have to check in with myself there. After a grounding exercise like that, though, that worthiness is there. I find it. Um, and that felt really, really, yeah, proud. I felt really proud to be able to say that at this point.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
so good. I'm
Yeah.
so happy for you, and I'm happy you shared that with us.
Thanks. And it's a journey, right? And that's what we're going to be speaking about. It is a journey. And some days we feel worthy, some days we don't feel worthy. And just love ourselves every day. And what came up for me, Kelsi, for the is we are growing as well. I also thought about that. So for you listening, maybe that came in too. Maybe we're all growing. And I thought about that we collectively, we as athletes, we as humans, we with ACT, and you and I, Kelsi, this whole group, we're growing by talking about these topics that we're passionate about, that are near and dear to our hearts, that we're being called to talk about, that we're leading conversations on and bringing people in conversations on it, and also just offering the space for people to have these conversations around. So let's dive into it and know that for you listening, whatever came up for you for I am and we are is perfect for you, and whatever was meant to come up today, as always, for any guided meditation as well. Okay. Self-worth. What does self-worth first off mean? So for you listening, go ahead and notice, just what does self-worth mean to you? Just think about kind of what comes up. And also notice, what do you feel like your self-worth, say for you, your self-worth, what is it attached to? What is it connected to? Just check in there for a moment, pausing what you feel like your self-worth today, because every day it may be different. What you feel like today your self-worth is attached to. And just notice the feelings around that. If there's things that you love what it's attached to, what it's connected to, or what you maybe it's something that you don't really enjoy. Just observe those kind of spectrum of potential emotions or feelings around it. And you'll hear from us that we also have that spectrum of emotions and feelings around our self-worth as athletes, as transitioning athletes. Kelsi, to you, what is self-worth?
Oh man. So when we went on that guided meditation at the beginning of this, I was finding myself imagining these roots going down and almost like those thicker roots that are closer to the tree,
Hmm.
that are closer to the core of the tree.
Yeah.
It was like those thick roots were like finding as I explore through this and navigate through life, it's finding these values, these things that I hold really close to my heart and speak to me. And
Mm.
it was like as the roots were growing, it was like those thick ones were like kind of finding their things and like kind of wrapping themselves around it. And for me, that was like really just kind of explaining what self-worth is. It's not only how you see yourself and how you view your relationship with yourself,
Mhm.
but it's also like at the core being of who you are, like what and it's crazy because it can change. It's always evolving. We're growing humans and we're always our goals, our missions, our whatever we're
Mhm.
dealing with is always shifting. So these some of these the self-worth, I guess, can is always getting redefined, right? But it's what is close to us and what we feel is almost like that is who I am, you know? It's like those
Ooh,
core beliefs and those core values of who I am and how you view yourself. So it's very much a relationship with yourself and it's like it's what makes you you, you know?
yeah. Yeah, I'm hearing the connection, self-worth connection to who you are, is who you are, and also your relationship with yourself. And I resonate with that so deeply as well. That's I feel the same way in that way that self-worth to me is your it's a feeling, it's a way of being. To me, it's not a doing. It doesn't depend or relate or connect to doing. It has, and it still does to me on days. I think at my heart, though, I know it is more about being who I am and this sense of the vision that comes to mind to me is sunlight, like a light, an orb of light, say the sun in the sky, where it's um, a light that's always there. The self-worth is always there. Whether I choose to really reveal it or practice it or use it is a different story, is another topic, that how I show up with self-worth or how I don't show up with my self-worth, whether I, create the boundaries I need to honor my self-worth. But it is this feeling of being that I am always deserving, that I'm always enough, that I'm always, I can live my life on my terms. I deserve to live my life on my terms. And I can do that in a way that is very nurturing to myself and the people around me. Like it's for my highest good and for the people around me. It's not anyone's detriment. In other words, that's how I see self-worth today. I'll say.
I like that. I know today, right? It's such an evolving journey and process and exploration, I guess, of self-worth.
Yeah. And we're, the way we're talking about this, we're already seeing how it relates to identity, how we kind of that piece of how we show up in the world. How do you feel like self-worth relates to identity as athletes, as transitioning athletes?
It is, I mean, you've got it exactly right. It is exactly how we show up for the world. And, it's because it's how we see ourselves. So that's how we're showing up. And I
Mhm.
think, for me personally, when I was really, when rugby, winning gold, when rugby was my main priority and my main everything, I found myself so tying that identity and that self-worth to rugby.
Yeah.
So it was so dependent on rugby. So if I made these teams, I felt worthy, but when I wasn't making these teams, even though I was training at
Yep.
the Olympic
Yep.
Training Center, I was training full time. Like this was my dream job. I was getting to live my dream job. and I wasn't making the team sometimes, I would feel just devastated and I would be so hard on myself. The way I looked at myself and my perception of self was just like, you're not good enough. Like you didn't make the team. You were not chosen for the starting or the traveling 12. Like, and even then, if I was just chosen for this
Yeah.
traveling 12, I wasn't a starter. I was getting maybe like 3 minutes a whole tournament over 2 days. And it was that conversation with myself was so like, you're not a starter. And I was like, I was tying my self-worth to the identity and my identity to these accomplishments or these teams being made or whatever. And it was just such a negative, I had such a negative perception of myself. And oh, it was so hard. It was like,
Yeah.
but it
Yeah.
was everything because sport is being an athlete was who I was. That's it made me who I was. So it was just so like tied and intricate and like all knotted up together that it was so hard to navigate. Like, what is self-worth and what is my identity and what is tied with sports and what is,
Yeah.
unrealistic expectations from the outside and from the internal, what I was expecting of myself was like, come on, dude, got to be a little, show some
Yeah.
self-compassion. So
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely find that self-worth and the identity is really hand in hand. I mean, they
Mm.
go together just like peanut butter jelly.
Peanut butter jelly. And you shared that visual before, Kelsey, of the roots. And as you're describing all tangled, I'm seeing like instead of the roots being like these are the deep roots related to my values and who I am, it's like this just tangled snarl of not just your roots, but like other roots around where it's wait, whose is whose? What am I dependent on? Like where am I versus like my who am I and where's the line drawn between me and my role, my job, or my career as an athlete, and that identity piece. And I felt it's very similar. And I think yeah, as an athlete, I had the same stories of it's never quite good enough. If I made the national team, great. Okay, now I need to be a starting goalie. If I'm not the starting goalie, oh, you are not enough now. It's just a continual. I want to be the best. I want to be the best, and
Yeah.
I there is a point where it's like, wait a minute, JB, you're trying to be the best. And why don't we just focus on being your best? But to say that is one thing, to actually live it and believe it in your body. If it's something that you've been believing about yourself for, however many years, even before sport, for example, then how do you move from that, which is what we get into in the journey of self-worth and the tools that we talk about. And also let's look at Kelsey. What do you feel like identity and self-worth is for the transitioning athlete now?
Oh man, I feel like oh, it is so much just kind of identifying what actually makes you authentically happy. This time through this transition,
Mhm.
I'm very recently transitioned and even then it's been a couple of years and I'm recently transitioned, right? But it's just such a journey of identifying like what makes me happy because for so long rugby is what made me happy. That was making these teams, going traveling the world and getting to play these
Mhm.
the best of the best. Like I got to play New Zealand so many times and that was just like, what? That is unreal. So for so long it was like that is what made me happy. And as I transitioned, I didn't have these sporting accomplishments. I didn't have these things to like feel good about myself, because that's how I tied my self-worth and my happiness to. It was these accomplishments, these sporting
Mhm.
things, because being an athlete was who I was. And as I, went on this journey of transition, it was kind of like, okay, well, what makes me happy? Like, what do I actually
Yeah.
like? Do I actually like playing rugby? And that's been one of those things that I'm still kind of battling. I'm still back and forth on because when I first retired from the sevens team, it was like I was still playing with the 15s team. So I still had some kind of like way to tie my self-worth to a team. I was still like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm still a
Yeah.
USA player. And even then it was like, okay, after that, after I walked away from 15s, it was like, oh, I'm still making these elite teams. Like I'm still tying my self-worth to these teams and these accomplishments and these tournaments I was playing.
Mhm.
Um, and as I started like questioning, like, does rugby actually make me happy? For a while it didn't. And I'm starting to kind of feel like, okay, wait, maybe maybe I do like rugby. Like maybe I do want to continue
Yeah.
playing. And so I'm still exploring that idea. Um, but the journey to like the self-worth and as a transitioning athlete, I think is just you really dive in and kind of find the values that made you the athlete you were. So like your work rate or your determination.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was just like I was in awe of myself because it's like when I put myself to a task, like for instance, making the USA rugby team, I go out and do it. And that is I'm adaptable. I do everything it
Yeah, you
takes to,
are. Yeah.
take to accomplish that goal. And that is something I really hold tight to me. So, when you're thinking of those roots and those values and that self-worth, like that's one of those things that the thick tree trunk is holding tight to. It's like when you set your mind to something, Kelsey, you can literally accomplish anything. And
Yeah.
that belief in myself and that like way of looking at myself is really, it makes me feel good. And I'm like, okay, that's part of my self-worth is that determination. I like that, that's part of who I am. And that's what I want to value. So it doesn't matter what I'm applying that determination to. Maybe it's sport, maybe it's as a mother, maybe it's in my job, maybe it's trying to learn something I've never learned before, whatever
Mm-hmm.
I kind of
Mm-hmm.
put that to, it doesn't matter how far I go or what I accomplish. I'm doing that like I'm determined to do something. I'm in progress of completing that task, and that is what makes me feel good. So I think as a transitioning athlete, it's really kind of identifying like what makes you feel good? What do you authentically like? And what do you want to live by now that you don't have sport?
Mm. Oh, wow. Kelsi, I'm hearing this. The words that come to me for is like the journey of empowerment, of self-empowerment, where, because, if we've been focused on these other goals or this kind of, there's more structure, in an organized sport or say other jobs, there's these organized structure to it with these goals ahead that are very clear. They're crystal clear and they're laid out before us. I mean, yes, we're the ones who decide. We're the ones who decide that we're going to go for it, that we're going to work hard, and we're the ones who actually do the work to get there. And, the USA team already exists. The championships exist. They're pre-existing, goal points or mountains to climb. Right. And then it's like that transitioning space is there's no mountain range ahead. It's clear space. And you're at a point where you have the opportunity to say, okay, well, what do I want now for me? What do I want to create? And I'm hearing also this focus on, and this is so beautiful because it's so related to self-worth, is how I want to create it. How do I want to create this life? Like, how do I want to show up in my life every day? And that's where my values, that's where my self-worth is. So I may have a job that I love and I need to be able to do it in a way that honors my self-worth, and the other kind of phrases that come up for me is, and this is the themes that I see when working with the athletes. So the one-on-one coaching with the athletes that are transitioning out of sport. Some of them are still currently competing. Most are transitioning out of sport. And then also in our human athlete collective, the group of athletes that come together from all over the world to talk about what's coming up for them, during transition, is this, these questions, the big questions of, okay, what do I do? And who am I? And here we are at the end of part 1 of our 3-part series on identity and self-worth as transitioning athletes. Tune in for the next episode. Ciao. Thank you for joining us today on the Human Athlete Podcast. To learn more, we invite you to visit www.athletecareertransition.com. See you next time.